Hi pilots, this is a follow-up flight to my previous flight last week in an attempt to determine if the Skywing TS2500 VTX is suitable to use for a long-range flight to provide good first-person view out, past a mile, probably longer. What we did here, first flight, I pulled the power for the VTX off of the flight battery and then logged in how long the thing stayed in the air before the low power alarm came on, and logged that time down. Now this time I'm powering the VTX not with the flight battery but with a small 2S Lipo to determine if that would provide more flight time instead of pulling power off the flight battery. However, it also added about 20 grams of weight to the bird. So we're going to test here and see when the low voltage alarm comes on here, and then compare that to when the low voltage alarm came on during the flight when I was pulling power off the flight battery. So this should be rather interesting. I noted that on this flight here, same location, same battery, everything else being equal as much as I could make it so. There was no wind, however, today. The previous flight there was maybe 5-10 mile an hour wind from the back to the front. Today, this morning, there is no wind, and of course the CG held its lateral position quite well, I thought, even though I'm not running the optical positioning sensor. There's just no room for it on here. So I'm keeping time. I started the time on my iPhone here right as I lifted off. I started recording on the Mobius Mini, of course, before that, just before I did the calibration. So the time on the first-person view is going to show longer, of course, than the actual flight time. So I'm going to kind of narrate as we go along here. You'll note that as the battery begins to wear down at, 5 or 6 minutes or so, it begins to lose altitude rather easily, and when I try to apply a little bit of altitude, you'll see it trips the low voltage alarm. I think it first trips it at 7 minutes and 23 seconds of actual flight time. Anyway, let's watch, and I'll cut in and narrate as we need it here. I had forgotten that Wednesday mornings is when the city guys water the grass and mow the lawn, and they're starting up the sprinkler systems behind me there. You may be able to see that. And they're actually waiting for me to get done. So I'm a little bit nervous, in a kind of a hurry here, but nonetheless, they let me run the whole test before they get the sprinklers going here, at least in my area. Not quite 3 minutes into the flight. First person view, looks good. Still very flyable. Again, this is the Mobius Mini and the Skywing TS2500, 2,500 milliwatts, probably overkill, and very, very heavy. This is a very heavy setup. I think it's 131 grams, pretty heavy. It's very tail heavy, in fact, and as the battery wears down, it begins to drift backwards, as you will see a little later on here. Not quite 4 minutes into the flight. Got to give it a little altitude here. Of course, places more load on the battery anytime you try to make it climb. And as you can see, it's getting to the point where it's a little difficult to hold its altitude. It's holding its position pretty well. And did a little walk around here. It's already drifted back a little bit, as you can see. I'm going to hold the camera under the quad. The 2S Lipo is there on the left side, underneath the left landing gear there. Going on 6 minutes. Note that there's, I believe, about a 56-second time differential between the time displayed when you're watching the video and the actual time from liftoff, the actual flight time, as registered on my iPhone there. So the iPhone time is the actual flight time from liftoff. Give it a little altitude, and that tripped the low voltage alarm, but it didn't stay on but for 5 or 6 seconds. There's the low voltage alarm again on at about 7:37, and it stays on now. Hard to keep this thing in the air, and you can see how far it drifted back. Sorry for the shakiness. I was a little nervous trying to get this thing done before the sprinklers come on here. So I put it down. I didn't want to continue to fly. I'm trying not to hurt the battery. And I'm going to walk over there and shut it down. New project coming up, new test of the parabolic reflector on a stock antenna, 5.8 gigahertz antenna. And shutting her down. Trying to wrap this thing up and not get wet at the same time here. Here's the battery we used right there. About 20 grams weight that added to the system. And there's the weight of the TS2500. Pretty heavy, 68.3 grams. That is a very heavy transmitter. And of course the Mobius Mini and the mount, 43.6 grams. Nice camera. Here's total weight as tested this morning. 131.8 grams. Heavy deal. And I logged in the battery warning at 725. That's approximate, pretty close. So, and the previous one at 111 grams, pulling power off the flight battery. And it lasted a little bit longer. 758 is what I call it, about that anyway. So here's the conclusion. It looks like to me adding the extra weight of the battery caused it to cause the low voltage warning to come on sooner than when we were pulling power off the flight battery. And I got to admit, I'm a little surprised. I thought it would have been the other way around. I guess when you're dealing with a system that's adding 111 grams to the bird here, and then you add another 20 grams on top of that, it's pretty susceptible to the weight. I guess more so than the draw on the flight battery. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it.